Hello, everybody. Welcome to our RAG Hack live streams.
RAG Hack is a free global hackathon happening from September 3rd to 16th. RAG is a technique to get a large language model to answer questions based off your data. We have more than 25 live streams teaching you how to build RAG apps with different Microsoft technologies, plus 10 cash prizes for the best RAG apps in each category. So we're super excited to have you join us for this RAG Hack. And now a word from our friends at Reactor.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's session. My name is Danny, and I'm the event planner for the New York Reactor space. Before we start, I have a few things to go over. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional, and on topic. Useful links will be shared in the chat. The session is recorded and will be available on demand 24 to 48 hours on the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel. Which brings us to today's session. It'll run for approximately 1 hour with time for questions throughout. I will now turn it over to our speaker for introductions.
Hello, my name is, sorry. So we're going to talk today about connections in Azure AI Studio. Marco, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Marco Cardoso. I'm an engineer at an organization called Fast Track within Microsoft, which means we cover pretty much all of Azure in different aspects. Want to go ahead, Chris?
Yeah, and you're kind of on the data and AI team. I'm on the application, modernization and development team in Fast Track as well. And like you, I love that we get to talk about all the different parts of Azure and really the connections between all those services, which kind of ties back to what we're talking about today, AI Studio, and all of the connections that are there. I really want to kind of cover why AI Studio, like what it is, some of the breakdowns of it, and some of the connections that are available. And then we're really going to talk about some of the capabilities that are there that really help you, especially in a more enterprise space, do permissions and security as you start implementing these models. And we've got a ton of great demos as well. And I think through this, Marco and I will tell you some of the stories and pain points we've experienced over time trying to implement RAG chatbots and other solutions. So let's go to so AI Studio really is this big platform to let us build AI solutions. And one thing it brings us is this centralized place for security and lets us tap into all sorts of different APIs and models and really kind of centrally manage some of our connections and services. And this is why it's a great solution for building things. Now, not only do we have access to a ton of models and can use things like VS Code to interact with it, but because it's backed in Azure, we can collaborate on models, on data sets, on our coding solutions, and we really can centralize how we manage access. It's going to be pretty cool, and we'll mention some of the examples as we go. So one really interesting concept that exists in AI Studio is the idea of this hub. So there's these top-level hubs where we can assign permissions to teams, and so each project will have its own set of resources and environments. We have connections to all the different AI services like OpenAI and AI Search and other cognitive services, as well as various models that we might want to deploy. Now, Marco, I don't know about you, but when we've done stuff in the past, it was very piecemeal and we would have to wire up all these things independently, and that was always a pain. And when, like, you and I worked on a couple of projects, the pain of getting the right roles every time and assigning them to the right people and then cleaning them up as people rolled on and off was just always problematic. And I'm sure you've had some similar stories with some of your enterprise customers or even small and medium business customers as well, building these.
Absolutely. And I think you mentioned something very critical there. When we think about the enterprise, we get sort of in these situations where we're sharing resources. We need permissions to be just right. And we have different projects that have different sets of data to work with. We certainly don't want them accessing each other's data. And this used to be hard. So AI Studio came in as a great response to those pain points. Today, it's built exactly to tackle that kind of scenario, and I'm really glad we're talking about this.
Right. So I mean, a lot of times we might deal with different groups. Maybe there's a centralized IT group that spins up a lot of infrastructure. They might manage the storage accounts. We might have a data team that manages Fabric or a data lake or some type of data set. And so we can have this hub where people put all of the data and artifacts. The infrastructure team can spin up the compute that we need and can manage the security and governance pretty easily. And as we spin up projects, each project can have that isolated, maybe training set or evaluation data set, so that we can really have scoped conversations about our project. And it also makes it easy to have nested projects, multiple projects that kind of feed off of each other. I think we were going to talk about that a little bit later, where maybe the output of one project is used as an input into another. And then, of course, all the connections that we're going to explore. So this is a different way of thinking about it because it really makes it so we're not duplicating everything all the time. And it simplifies in some ways some of that shared services model that a lot of organizations have, where they might not spin up a different OpenAI instance for every single business unit. They might have one that they share across the org. And this is a good way to do that. So again, with that hub, this is where we can centralize things, where we can manage our compute and we can do our security, and those projects let us isolate. And you're going to show that in some of the demos later, how we have some components, but the projects are kind of more isolated. They have a project scope connection. So I might not be able to see your data if you're working in a different project. It'll be more isolated, which is great. And as we start adding those connections, not only is it Azure OpenAI, AI Search, but there's all sorts of things. We can do speech. We actually have some samples in some projects we work on in our AI in the box accelerators where you can do natural language to SQL. We have some samples, and I know you were working on some, where we have data stored in Blob or maybe Data Lake. And we can call out to other models. And I'll actually show some of these in a little bit, where we're not just on OpenAI. There's some other community and open source models that are out there that we can leverage for some of our workflows.
Chris, can I stop you for a second? I see an interesting question on the chat, and I wonder if we can put it down here for folks to see.
Yeah. Oh, AI Hub in Azure. How does that differ from scope and capabilities of GitHub? Well, GitHub is a great place for source code repositories and workflows, as far as building and executing based on like pushes and forks. And it does have a team permission model where you can have teams that can see access to source code, but you're still at some point going to have to add some permissions to allow things to call or administer maybe your OpenAI service, or maybe your AI search service. And I'm actually going to talk a little bit about the permission model in a minute, but AI Hub actually has a permission proxy and has some isolation around how data is stored. And that's actually one of the next slides as well, talking about some of the different scoped containers that are there. Do you want to add a few things there, Marco?
Yeah, I would even say that we often use both at the same time. We typically use GitHub or even Azure DevOps to store our source code and make sure, even with infrastructure as code, we want this stuff to be versioned within something like GitHub. But when we're talking about the AI hub, the AI studio in general, we're talking about infrastructure. So we're sharing resources in Azure with different organizations or different folks in our teams. It's more about infrastructure and less about code, though it does contain code as well. And we'll go into that into the next sections.
And there's actually a ton of great samples out there. Some were released at Build, some are out there on Awesome AZD. Like, we have some capabilities where there is Bicep and Terraform that spin up AI Studio and AI Hub and allocates those various resources through infrastructure as code. But some of this is also around runtime and development interaction, rather than just, hey, I've been able to allocate it to infrastructure as code and I've got my individual code or infrastructure in GitHub. Maybe I want to store my data set and the wiring up of my data set and my training models and my eval in AI Hub. So once I've built it in GitHub, now I'm operating and training and I have the outputs of my models. And that might be where we're using AI Hub a little bit more. So great question. Hopefully we'll answer a little bit more as we go. So Mark, I was going to say, we have all these different services. And one thing I always like to talk about is security. When we first started using Azure OpenAI, a lot of us used keys. And even with blob storage, we might have a SAS key and we'll use Key Vault to store those. I think the whole industry and Microsoft has definitely moved on to things like managed identity and keyless access. And I just wanted to see if you wanted to add a few things around keylessly consuming a lot of these services and connections.
Absolutely. So a couple of things, and we'll see this in action during the demos. We can still use keys and regular anonymous ways to access these services through AI Hub. As we're creating connections, those can be simply a reference to an API key. But Studio also helps us do it the right way and the most future-proof way possible by allowing us to sort of use managed identities to make sure we have the right access at the right time. So it definitely helps from the perspective of doing things right from the start and without increasing complexity by a lot. I've gotten to a point using Studio that I'm even more efficient in my work by not leveraging keys at all. Which makes us more secure and more efficient at the same time. So we'll go into a little bit of that during the demo, but I do appreciate this model really helps doing things right.
And I mentioned we'd have some different containers for our code. So when you allocate an AI Hub, there's a storage account that's there, and it does store some things. It can store your code or scripts if you have individual scripts that you load while you're playing around. Artifacts, like the outputs of your models, trained models, evaluations, especially if you're starting to do some evaluation flows and you're like looking at how your models are evaluated. Data sets, if you need to export different data sets for training and testing, those are in storage areas. Individual logs about your projects. And all these are usually keyed to your project, so they're a little bit more isolated. And then there's this model catalog, which I think is really cool, especially if you're looking at not only the large language models like Azure OpenAI, ChatGPT, and 4.0, but if you're looking at maybe smaller language models like 5.3 or Mistral, even Llama. There are quite a few that are available that have been curated by Azure OpenAI, Azure AI, as well as a number of Hugging Face models. And you can have your own compute that you deploy these to. You can do like a serverless API where you just pay as you go against them. And there's a lot of different capabilities. I'm just going to quickly bring up the model catalog. So you can see in AI Hub, looking at the model catalog, there are so many different models that I can pick from. So of course, the Azure OpenAI or the OpenAI like GPT-4o and embedding models, but then we've got some of the new 5.3 models and 3.5 with vision. Like, these are extremely powerful, and you can do some interesting things combining small language and large language. We've got some of the Llama models and Mistral, and there's just a ton of different ones out there that you can then filter on and use in different ways. And they have some great filters. And if you're kind of curious about what's going on, they actually have ways where you can compare different models. So you can come in here and look at model accuracy. You can drill down and separate and compare individual models for a number of different capabilities. So this is a great way to start experimenting and playing with various models from different sources. What are some of your favorite models right now, Marco? I mean, I've been getting into 5.3 more and more, but 4.0 is just right now the best model for me.
It is for sure. I have a soft spot in my heart for open source.
Yeah.
So I really like to see how many models we have in that catalog. One thing that that I really appreciate about that catalog is it starts out with all of the best models in the class.
Yeah.
We have things like GPT 4.0. We have the older ones, 3.5, and so on. But further down, you've got 5.3, which is by Microsoft, but it's open source. We've got a ton of stuff from Hugging Face and Llama. And these models, we can deploy them right here from the studio. So if we're talking about something that's proprietary, that link, if you click on that model, it'll lead you to a place where you can provision that within the cloud. But if you're looking at an open source model, it'll give you instructions on how to run it locally or run it on your own infrastructure. So I really like how it brings everything together in the same place, much like what we have today in GitHub models, where we're giving these tools in the hands of developers, and they're able to develop, regardless of their model choice. And we're giving them all the data they need to choose the right one.
Yeah, I think this is a really great tool that lets you dive in and explore and try different models. So I think this is one of the best capabilities there. And I mentioned access. So there is different access control. So by using AI Studio, you start separating the managed control of individual resources from how you interact with it in AI Studio. And it has, like I mentioned, this control plane proxy. So if you have certain accesses in AI Hub, you don't necessarily, or AI Studio, you don't necessarily need those same level of permissions on the individual models. So if the centralized IT team, for instance, creates a storage account and an AI search and other capabilities, and you have access to your project and permissions in the Hub and Studio, and you make a change to the storage account or you make a change to the models, if you have the relevant permission, it can proxy through those operations to those underlying resources. Now, that means like every different project or hub has its own shared storage account. We've got different attribute-based access control. I mentioned the storage accounts have like per project ID-based containers that protect the different workflows. And then you can do data encryption. You can specify your own key or use a Microsoft key for data encryption. Now there's another good question that came in, and Marco, I think I'll toss this over to you if you want to handle that. What is the difference between Azure OpenAI Studio and Azure AI Studio?
That is a great question and one we get a lot. So Azure AI Studio, this that we're presenting here, it's you could call it a combination of two things that we had in Azure for a while. One is the AI. So we have pretty much all the functionality that you have in OpenAI Studio is either already in AI Studio or making its way there. Even some of the screens are the same. You'll see a lot of familiar controls in that interface, but it brings together another piece, which is the machine learning side of things. So if you're familiar with Azure Machine Learning, it's a whole different suite of tools, not necessarily related to generative AI. It's where we build predictive models, time series models, regression models, and all that fun stuff data scientists work with. And that experience was sort of disconnected from the AI. So we had these two separate studios, but really there's functionality in these two platforms that play really well together. We need data to perform ML and AI, so why not bring everything into the same place? So now with AI Studio, we have these functionalities from the two worlds in the same place. So you can do every step of the process, since preparing your data, making your data sources available, connecting to these data sources, which is the theme of our presentation here, all the way into deploying them into generative AI models as OpenAI or others. So I would say it's something of a superset. AI Studio is a superset of OpenAI Studio.
Yep.
To sort of increase the reach of the tool.
And again, like going back to that superset, like we've got a full model catalog. So when you look at Azure OpenAI Studio, it's really centered around OpenAI and the GPT models. As you start looking at AI Studio, it brings in that, like you said, machine learning, third-party models. It just unifies all of those different solutions in one space. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but I want to mention before we get into our demos. Thank you. Great question. Before we get into the demos, I want to mention that you really need to have responsible AI as any part of any solution that you deploy. And this is how you handle your prompts, how you assess queries and responses. And really, we want to be able to leverage some of those capabilities. And Microsoft has quite a few around responsible AI that we try to leverage. You also will notice that we had a lot of different benchmarks around the different tool chains. So if you're wanting to leverage some of the different models or have some sort of automation around LLM ops to evaluate your workflows and test them for groundedness, there are some capabilities in AI Studio, I think, that go really well. But this is something that we discuss with every single customer that Marco and I deal with. When they want to have an AI conversation, we usually have a responsible AI conversation before we get down into it, because there can be a lot of concern. And so just keeping that in mind as we go through conversations. And with that, Marco, I will turn the screen over to you. Let's dive into some demos and the studio itself.
All right, let's do it. So I've got my Azure portal here. This demo and everything I'm going to show here, I believe you can use a free subscription if you have credits from being a student or a researcher. That will work for the purpose of this demo. What I'm going to do is just set up an AI Studio with you guys just to show how we can get started, how we can connect all these services. What are these services that we're going to be connecting to AI Studio to sort of lay down the foundation for you guys to work on your use cases and build an amazing hackathon project. So there are two ways to create an AI Studio instance and everything that it relies on. My favorite one is to, as always, use the global search on the Azure portal. So you'll go to portal.azure.com. Mine has an MS in front of it because I'm using the preview version of the portal. But you'll look for Azure AI Studio and select the first one that comes up. You will not see all these Studio instances because my subscription is a little bit crowded, but you'll see an option to create a new Azure AI Hub. So I'm going to select that. This option has a ton of features. It allows you to pretty much configure the AI Hub with everything you need. If you're looking for more of an express creation, you can also go directly to ai.azure.com. And in there, if you go to all hubs, you also get the option to create a new hub. This is sort of a streamlined way to do this. So if you're looking to just get started quickly, use default options and set everything up, I would recommend going this route. Whereas if you're looking for a more robust playground, something like a sandbox that you can use for more projects, if you're looking to set up for your organization, I definitely recommend either the portal or even Bicep templates to get even more specific. So what do we need to configure here? First of all, resource group, as always. I'll do an RG test. I won't go through with this creation just to show you what's out there. I'll use a studio that I've already created in the interest of time. We'll need a region. Make sure to pick a region that has the models that you're looking to work with. There's a very complete guidance on our docs of where the models are available, talking either Azure OpenAI, Llama, Phi 3. All these models have different regions where they're supported, so make sure you pick a region that supports them. One of my favorites is Sweden Central. That just happens to be one that gets features earlier, and it's an overall pretty cool place to write out your POCs. Also, East US 2, if you're in the US region, is pretty good, but make sure you check out if the region supports the model you're looking to work with. It'll need a name.
I was going to say, it's all in that Learn documentation, the model, the version, and the regions that it supported in.
Yep, that's a great call out. So just give it a name. I always recommend having a naming convention. I've taken to use hub as a prefix. Then I'll call it Cardoso, which is me. We can design a separate resource group for projects. I'm not going to do that. And you'll see one of the first connections that we have available is OpenAI. So what we'll create as part of this process is something called an AI services instance that contains many different AI services, including OpenAI, speech, form recognizer. It has everything you need to create a simple AI-infused app. So this will be created by default and already connected to our hub by default. Next up, we have storage, and we have 4 different services under storage. So let's talk about these. The first 2 are mandatory. We have a storage account. That's what's going to hold all of our data, all of our artifacts. If we fine-tune a model and we want to drop it in a location that can be accessed, if we create some evaluation data sets, they will end up there. All our code, there's an option to develop using the cloud, and that's where our code will live. And as Chris mentioned, this storage account, it's a single storage account for the whole hub, but it gets segmented for each project. So each project can share into data that's designed for the whole organization that's using this hub, but it can also segregate and have their own specific data sets.
A great way to scale so that you can have those centralized projects that then other people can consume once you've made those data sets.
Yep. Then we have Key Vault. Key Vault is our home for everything secrets. So connection strings, all the connections to other services will be stored here as either connection strings, API keys, and so on. This is especially important if you're using API keys for any of the services. You certainly don't want these laying around in your code. And AI Hub will provide a way for you to automatically drop these secrets into Key Vault and not have to worry about it. From a user perspective, it's almost transparent. The AI Hub takes care of authenticating with the services so that your users themselves don't really need to know what's going on. So we've got these 2 as mandatory storage locations. We have 2 others. Application Insights is for all of our monitoring data. So for most model deployments, we have the option of logging everything that goes through them. How many users, how many tokens, any sort of information about availability and usability of our apps typically lands in Application Insights, and that's something we can turn on and off. And if you're a fan and a power user of containers, we've got Container Registry, which is a service that will hold all our Docker images. So these include our Python environments, development environments, our actual application code packaged as Docker images. And that's really useful if you're using any sort of compute that relies on containers. That is your basic connection setup. Next up, we have networking, and this is really important. For the hackathon, for anything fast and to get some functionality out the door, I recommend that you guys choose public. And this is something that is only valid for hackathons, for something that you're experimenting with the service sandbox-wise. If you're going production, there's really no getting out of a private connectivity setup. It's much more secure. We get the option to secure both inbound and outbound access to this hub. So of course, for the most security possible, you would go to the far right with controls on either side. But if I'm being honest, if you wanted to get something out the door fast, I would go with public. Chris, I saw you react to that, so I want to give you the opportunity to speak.
I was just going to say, if it's a development thing, fine. Be very aware of what data and what you're exposing when you're in that public mode. That's all. Like, if you put up a cool data set and ask questions about, Superman or Deadpool, cool. Be very aware if there's anything beyond something like that.
Absolutely. Also, do keep in mind, public does not mean it's out in the open. There's still authentication that's not negotiable with AI Hub. There's still, all of the data sources, all the underlying services have authentication on them. So it's not like anybody can see them, but they will have a public endpoint, meaning if the keys leak or something happens, that tends to happen on GitHub if you're not careful and you don't use key vaults. You could be exposed to that sort of attack.
Or managed identity. I'm just a big zero trust fan, so I try to have minimal access and minimal, permissions where possible. That's
I'm right there with you. Cool. We've got encryption. Encryption it's very similar for any service that you see on Azure. You either use our keys, which means we encrypt your data at rest, or we use your key, which means we also encrypt data at rest, but we don't have access to it. So this may be required by some industries. Again, for a playground, for a test of functionality, this doesn't really make a difference. I would leave it disabled. And finally, we have identity, and I'm going to let Chris talk about the aspects of managed identity here.
Yeah, for some roles, so there's two options. There's system managed and user assigned identity. So it's system assigned identity. When you create a resource, we can create an identity with that resource, and you can assign permissions from, like you might have mentioned in a previous call, from OpenAI to AI Search, or from your app service to a storage account. They're allowed to have permissions between them, and you say the app service is allowed to access data from the storage account, or your function is allowed to access the database, or your AI search is allowed to access a storage account. Now, when you start having lots and lots of managed identities, sometimes people start doing user assigned, where you're creating an individual identity and assigning multiple resources with that same identity. There's some whole documentation about it. It's really good, but I've moved to managed identities over those keys, because with the key, it's something you can take. It's something you can leak. It's something you can accidentally check in. And if you have the name and the key, you can go wherever. With the managed identity, it is an attribute of the service, is an attribute of the resource, and it can't be stolen. Like, it has to be that resource trying to do the access, through a type of federation. So I try to lean towards identities wherever possible, because it's not something I can leak, and it makes my coding simplified. So in my code, I when I'm logging into Azure or I'm trying to access a credential or get a token, I just use default Azure credential. So when I'm developing locally, I do an AZ login or an AZD auth login. That's my identity, and I can access the things and do the things. When it's running in the cloud, it runs as the identity of that service. So yeah, big fan.
Absolutely, and that's something that I even prefer when developing, because the same code runs locally and in the cloud, so you don't have to worry about I have to switch keys or I have to switch an endpoint. It's all managed for you. It uses the credential that is available at the time.
Yeah, it simplifies your DevOps pipelines. You're not, like you said, replacing keys or injecting environment variables or maintaining config of the service. It's just, you just go.
Yep. So definitely recommend this. If you go with identity-based access, you also get the ability to completely disable shared key access, which is something that we're doing inside of Microsoft. It's a security best practice. So definitely something we want to consider for anything remotely production or or regarding sensitive data.
When you check that box, it also turns off SAS keys. So something to be aware of, like the shared access signatures. When you generate those that are maybe short-lived, say, hey, someone's allowed to access this storage account for the next month, those also get disabled with the keys.
Yep. All right. Other than that, we have tags. Tags are cool. I'm not going to go into them, but they do help identify the resources, and they can be applied across all the different resources. So something to consider, but not to any effect changing the functionality here.
Right.
With that, we can review and create, and that will spin up all the resources needed. Again, I won't be running this here because you're going to be staring at my screen for 5 minutes. It doesn't take long, I promise. This is a super fast setup, and it's the same setup that you would get out of the hub. So in here, same stuff. You create a hub name, choose a subscription, resource group. I don't have access to the subscription. That's why you're seeing a lot of red. But you'll see we don't get as many controls with regards to managed identity or networking. Again, this is why this is suitable for a test environment, but not really for production. And you even get a call out here. If you need to customize security or dependent resources, go to the Azure portal. Okay.
Let's dive into an actual hub then.
Yes, let's do that. So I already have a hub created. First of all, let me show you how it looks in the portal. I'll open up my resource specifically for this call, Azure AI Studio connections, and I'll filter out everything that doesn't get created out of the box. The reason I have more resources is precisely because I wanted this to be as safe as possible. So I just want the hub, the project, services, key vaults, and storage account. I have way too much zoom to be able to do that. Let me reduce a little bit.
No problem. We'll go back in a second.
There we go. This is what it's going to look like. And I'll reapply the zoom.
Perfect.
So here we've got not one, but 3 of these purple services. One is the hub itself. One is the AI services, the one that I mentioned that contains OpenAI and other cognitive services. And I already created a project. This one won't be created by default, just the key vaults and storage account. These also come pre-configured with any required roles that need to be assigned between the services. So that's what guarantees that the hub is able to access them, even if you decide to close down network access. So let's say you completely close down access. You don't want any of these services to have public endpoints. This would mean that the AI hub will set up the private connectivity to each of these resources. So as you create this, it's all good. It will be able to communicate across them.
And I'm sure we'll get into it when you dive into the permissions, but AI Studio has access to those different resources to manage them. So when we ask the AI Studio to make a change, it will actually proxy our request down into those services to make those tweaks.
Yep, you're right. All right, so let's go into AI, the AI hub. There's 2 ways to get in there. You can either open up the resource and go to the studio. Again, I have a lot of zoom. And that will land you here. Or you can go directly to ai.azure.com and find your hub there. So this is our hub. What do we do here? Well, first thing, let's check out how do we connect to other services. We were talking about AI Studio connections, so let's check out our connected resources. We have 5 here. These 2 in the middle are defaults. So as you create a hub, you minimally need Azure OpenAI and AI services. Those are connected by default. You don't have to do anything to set them up. If you chose identity-based access, they'll have authentication type Microsoft Entra ID, meaning it doesn't store any secrets or any API keys to access these services. Just that every time a user tries to use these connections, we'll use their user to connect. So this is a cool way to make sure that we only grant access to the right people instead of delegating that permission to the AI hub. So in that sense, it's not enough to just give a user access to the hub and they're able to mess up your backend services. we're relying on their identity to authenticate. So how do I create the other ones? Well, we can add a new connection, and this is a screen that Chris just had up. So whenever we want to add some functionality to our hub, we'll go into Add Connection and connect said service. Some of my favorite ones are, of course, OpenAI and AI services, which already come out of the box, but also AI Search, and this is going to be super important for the hackathon, as it's a RAG-based hackathon. Pamela probably covered this, well, absolutely covered this for the RAG 101, so you probably know what I'm talking about. If you didn't, check out the recording. So this is a service that's critical for RAG applications. It's one of the easiest ways to set up a RAG pattern application. So you'll probably want to choose that. And the way we connect services is super straightforward. We choose a type of service. The AI Studio will look at our subscriptions and see what services we have available. And for each one, we can decide if we want to add a connection or not, and the type of authentication. So I can choose either API key or Enter ID. So this lets me connect to any of these services. You'll see that I already did. So under my connections, I already have an Azure AI Search connection. It has the URL of that service, and it's already ready to go. Besides that, we also get connections to the storage. So every time you create a new project, and this is one of the projects that I previously created, it'll create two links. One is to a container called you can see the name is a GUID dash Azure ML, and one that says Azure ML dash blob store. Those are two different containers that contain different things. The blob store container will contain our actual data, anything we upload into it, whereas this guy will contain other artifacts like trained models, data sets, and so on. Cool. I guess this is the connected resources. I can show you that whenever you create a new project, another couple of these will come up. So if you go to all projects and add a new one, let's just add it for the sake of the demo here. And in a second, it will show up. Chris, talk to me.
Yeah, so you mentioned earlier, or we talked a little bit about, we might make one project and add a reference to its output to consume in a different project. And I didn't see other projects in that connection. So when I do something, how would I add some connections like that? Or if I had a generic service that I wanted to be able to connect to, how would I
that's
maybe
a good point.
things up?
So let's look at our available connections again. So besides these three, which we already connected, we have others such as serverless model. We can connect to a different project within this hub or in other hubs to target that model. Usually the output of a project is really going to be an endpoint that we can consume or some sort of application.
Or
right?
maybe one of those models from the catalog.
Yeah, right. So that is how we would connect to different hubs. We, again, we'll set up a target URI here, which contains the URL that hits that model. Authentication type, in this case, only API key is available. And we give it a connection name. Even more than that, if we want to go as generic as possible, we have custom connections. So other resource types, for example, custom keys or API key, that allows us to save custom secrets to this hub. Where do those land? Anytime I say that this is a secret, for example, and I say my very...
I'm going to guess key vault.
Secrets. Exactly. So whatever I type in here, as I save it, let's save it as test. Azure AI Hub will be responsible for proxying that request into the key vault, and that becomes available for use. So I don't have access to Key Vault. In fact, Key Vault is behind a virtual network, so I couldn't even access it. If I went directly to the portal and tried to access that secret, I don't have access to it. But because there's this connection, and this also applies to the other services, they're all behind virtual networks. But this means the studio acts as this connector between me and the services without having to expose them to the wild.
Excellent. So we've got some connections. I see some other shared resources down there under like deployments and compute instances. I'm guessing deployments is just like our normal AI models from like Azure OpenAI.
Yes, that is one thing that we'll go into. I just wanted to address a question that's on the chat. So our connections in preview, I don't see them in the Azure AI Studio, and that's a great question. So one thing you may notice. So sorry, what was that?
I was going to say some are. When you under the connections tab, some of those were in preview.
Yeah, so some of them are preview, but one thing you might notice as you're exploring the platform is, Marco, my screen looks different from yours. You may be in a project view. So right now you'll see that in the breadcrumb here, I'm in all hubs, this hub. So this means I'm in the hub view. If you go and open a project, like this is the one I created previously, you'll see that the options here are different. So you don't get the shared resources, for example. So shared resources, again, they live in the hub, and that's why you'll only find them there. The UI is very similar, so make sure when you don't find an option that you're in the right place. That's something I thought I'd call out. I've been
that's a good call out.
victim of that. So just wanted to make sure everybody finds themselves in the portal.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep going.
Yeah, so let's talk about, so we created our connections. Very cool. How do I use them? This is an important part. So a couple of ways to use them. Depending on the type of resource, of course, you use them for different things, and you'll use them in different sections of the hub. At this point, we're going to go into an actual project. It doesn't make sense to, we typically don't do any work besides setup on the hub. So this is where we would set up, deployments of Azure OpenAI models, compute instances, set up permissions, and so on. But if we want to use these connections, we typically go into a project.
Yeah, we only have about 5 or 10 minutes left. We want to save some time for questions. So let's get into those projects.
Yeah, awesome. So I'll open one here, and I'll show you a couple of ways to use these connections, especially in the context of RAG. So the first one is, we need to create a deployment with some sort of model, right? Chris talked about a model catalog. This is a great resource with a ton of different models that you can explore. If you're just getting started and want to get your feet wet, definitely try out Azure OpenAI. The reason I say that, and I'll choose 4.0 as my model here, is because we already have the connections necessary to deploy this model. So as you click deploy, and this is something that will happen in a lot of different places in the AI hub, is that it will ask me, hey, what connection would you like to use to deploy this model? You can see it picked out automatically. You probably want to use this one. But if you have multiple, you can always customize from the dropdown here. So this is the connection I'm going to be using, the model, the type, tokens per minute. I'll do a little bit more so we don't run out of quota mid demo. And I'll do a deploy.
And there's that content filter. So we have some responsible AI baked into the connection out to OpenAI.
Absolutely. And then once this is deployed, you can chat with that model. So let's go ahead and chat. This is something a lot of you are going to explore as part of the hackathon. You're probably going to deploy these models. Again, I'm using this this model, which is connected to a certain Azure AI Services instance. I can start asking questions to it. Let's say hello. And I hope my connection is still good. Yep. Again, we're proxying through, even though this resource is private. That connection is being managed by the AI hub. And in the context of RAG, you're absolutely going to want to add your data, right? So again, what we're going to do is, as you go into this section, add your data. If we want to add a new data source, we're going to, again, be leveraging the connections that we created. So be it connections to Azure Blob Storage, to AI Search, or even other services, they're going to come into play as we're setting up this use case inside the project. So let's add a new data source here and see what our options are. So simplest one you can get started with is probably to upload files. That would mean uploading files to a blob storage that's connected to a project, then indexing it in AI Search. But you'll see that at each step, we'll be asked to connect to a specific place. So let's, for example, upload files. I have an interesting file here that I call Cardoso benefits. It's a fictional benefits sheet from a fictional company. So let's do next. And at this point, it'll start asking me for those connections. So, okay, what connection would you like to use for Azure AI Search?
So this automatically builds that index for you. So you don't have to worry about some of the figuring out all the index configuration. This will just handle it.
Exactly. This is my favorite way to handle this stuff. It's all automated for you. It's secure by default. So this is just one of the easiest ways to get started.
Nice.
This will require an index name. I'll leave it as the default. Search index, again, if we're using vectorization, the AI Studio thinks, okay, I need a connection to deploy that text embedding model. Again, we're leveraging a connection from AI Studio. Let's use that and the default settings.
And that's awesome. Like it recognized you didn't have an embedding model in place and it deployed one. Like that is so cool.
Exactly. And it even spins up serverless compute to run this process for me. So once you set this up, and this is an important part of why the AI Studio, from an organization perspective, we do this once, and then do you need another project? You create a new project. You don't create new resources. You don't call in IT. I've been the networking guy for a company before. I know how busy their schedules get. So we don't need to loop in those people. We do this once. We guarantee that it's done right each time because it's reusing the same connections. And it's keeping everything safe through RBAC and through secret management.
Well, let's see what we got. So ingestion. So
yes, this will allocate the compute. It'll take my document, store it in AI Search, and it will leverage the connections at each step of the way. We don't have time to see this all go through, but I do have one that I did previously that I can show. It'll show all the, I don't know if it'll show the steps. No, it won't show the steps, but it's here. And I can chat with it. Well, would I recommend AI Studio to a friend?
Yeah, I think you would. I would.
What a question.
Right, let's go ahead and close this and keep going.
So let's see that index that's done, just so that we can see the end result here. I'll just select it from the dropdown. And finally, we can ask a question about it. Let's just do a refresh because it's probably still trying to track progress. It'll keep running on the background, by the way, so you don't have to worry about that stopping. I'll choose this guy. Let's ask a question about our benefits. Am I good for dental? Yeah, apparently my company offers dental coverage.
And it has references. That's awesome. The annotations are great.
Yeah, for sure. So this is where it got the information from. We can scroll down here to see the actual piece of the document that was consumed to do that. And there it is. I do have dental coverage.
Wow. So just in a couple of clicks, you're able to create a model, create an index, upload a document, have it scanned, and it's all wired up. That's really cool.
Yeah, and we even get an option to deploy as a web app. I won't be covering that because folks will do that in the next streams. Make sure you check out any programming language focused live streams because they will be covering how to deploy this to an actual application outside of the studio. But I hope this was a good introduction of how to use the AI Studio and the connections that it offers.
I think we got a couple minutes, and there's a few questions I saw in the chat. Why don't we talk about those real quick? So
yeah,
Steve asked, can we connect an APIM endpoint using connections? Now, for APIM, a lot of times we might put APIM in front of an API. Maybe we use the open API specification like a Swagger doc, or maybe we're putting it in front of an Azure OpenAI instance that it has a JSON Swagger doc. So we could use that endpoint, and if you have a key or something protecting it, that would be one of those custom sources. And so you could just add that, and you would have to maybe call it like you would, but you can see there's either an OpenAI model, there's an API key. So if you have like an API key for a custom endpoint, this is where you might need to put some Python code or some code to call that API and consume it back. But you could add that as a connection here.
Yep, absolutely. It won't be. It won't show up in the same places because it has a different, or it could have a different signature to that API. So this one will assume you have a specific one. But you could also use custom keys to set that up with APEN.
We got another question from Albert. Can we connect a website URL as a data source? This is something we get a lot from people.
Absolutely. So that one, there's a couple of different ways to do that. Well, the first one is, the RAG pattern, it works really well with AI search. We don't really always need to rely on AI search. So as long as you do the pattern as it's described, you get a question, you submit it to a search source, and then you provide the search results to the model for it to formulate an answer. You could very well use website data as that data source. I've done that once with the Azure Docs. It has a search bar and a search API. So I tried submitting that the questions to that endpoint, getting it back. It works pretty well. But a different approach would be to create a web crawler, for example, that would dump all the pages in a blob storage. And from there on out, you have a very straightforward way to index those files and ask questions about them.
And I will say, try to respect robots' text, and also be aware, if it is not your data, to follow all of the licenses and information on it. just be aware of what you're scraping and who you're scraping it from.
Especially in the age of generative AI, please respect the robots. I cannot stress that enough.
Hey, I for one welcome our new robotic overlords. But Pamela mentioned in the chat that she done RAG on her personal website. My personal website is on GitHub Pages in Markdown, so I can just take my whole Markdown site and put it in a blob storage and query against it if I need to. Next question I see here is, what does launch do, and what does it deploy to? So if you go back to the chat, when you were chatting with the model, what happens when we launch?
So when we launch, actually, let me go back to the project. Again, I'm in the wrong place. If you don't find the option, you're in the wrong place. There we go. So what does launch and what does deploy do? Deploy actually has a couple of different options depending on the project. Typically, you'll have at least as a web app. And what that does is it'll spin up all the infrastructure needed to set this up as an app services instance. So it'll create an app service plan, an app services instance. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, under the hood, I believe there is a GitHub repo with an implementation of the chat app that you can see the code if you need to fork and modify it. But this will take that sample reference implementation and deploy it out with all the right connections.
Exactly. So basically, it will take everything that you configure here, including the data source, if you set one up, and create an app that is actually externally accessible. So this is how you could deploy to an external audience, for example. In launching, it won't do anything right now because I haven't deployed it yet, but it will take me to that app once I deploy it.
And I will point out, Pamela did put into the chat the URL of the sample application that is used as a reference for that. Last question, and then we have to go because we're at time. Lewis said when he clicks the code button, he sees an Azure AI Hub endpoint. Should they use that? So if you click View Code at the top.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, if you just hit View Code there, they notice that there is an Azure AI endpoint there. So that Cog AI Studio endpoint. Should they use that, or should they use the Azure OpenAI endpoint directly? I would say I would continue to use that endpoint. That has everything wired up with the connections and the indexes and all of the permissions in place, and helps abstract away those direct or direct resources. So.
Yep, exactly. So this provides a couple of code samples. If you want to implement an app yourself, it has the code samples for you to do that. We have Python. We have, if you just want to see what the requests look like, they look like this.
All right. And I want to thank everybody. Remember, there is a URL for the GitHub discussions on this. We will continue to monitor that. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. It was a really good, lively discussion. And thank you, Marco, for writing us through all of the different components in the AI Studio. So
yeah, for sure.
Thank you, everyone. And please watch some of the following streams. We have some great stuff coming up, and we've already had some amazing sessions. Please contribute. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey, everyone. Hope you enjoyed today's session.
If you aren't registered yet for RagHack, you can register now at aka.ms/raghack/register, and you can introduce yourself on our forum. You can start hacking either by looking at one of our code samples or just starting from scratch. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to post them in our GitHub discussion forum, and you can also attend live office hours in our Discord. Once your project is ready, make sure to submit it before September 16th at 11:59 p.m. PT to be eligible for our cash prizes. And of course, make sure to join our upcoming live streams to learn more about RAG.